Girlfriend of 2 years cheated with my neighbor and now lives there. I ended my 2-year relationship with my long-term partner about a month ago. She returned to school a few months ago and started commuting with a guy who lives in the same neighborhood as she does. His first words to me are that he is a skilled manipulator of people and situations, which he promptly denies. When I first met him, I didn't like for him and told my girlfriend that I suspected he had bad intentions and a crush on her. She explains that he's not her type, and that they're simply good friends. I make the decision not to be the controlling kind and to place my trust in her. When she calls in ill from work on our anniversary, she claims that her back is hurting, but she ends up doing a side job for a neighbor instead. She doesn't get home from her part-time job until well after midnight on most nights. While she claimed that her phone had died, the individual with whom she was traveling had my phone number. He put me on a no-disturb list, and that was all. When I approach her about adultery, she categorically denies any involvement with another man. It doesn't take long for her to cease doing anything to help our house and spend all of her time with her friends. The day following our anniversary, it is Halloween, and she asked me to go out and get pumpkins and wine so that we may carve pumpkins together. After dressing in a hideous Halloween costume, she gets a text message indicating she has been invited to dinner, but that I have been invited, but she refuses to go. In this case, I provide her with an alternative, and she prefers to be dropped off at the neighbor's home. Because she's dressed in newspaper and it's raining outside, I send her there just to have her return because I already went to 3 grocery stores in quest of pumpkins and she's still not dressed properly. We return to our house and have a disagreement. She will be paid the following week, and I have asked her to get dog food from me since I am unable to do it due to my financial situation. After a few days of pretending to have money, I realize that she has spent all of her money on her friends, which is a shock to me. I evicted her after discovering that she had spent $300 above her means. She is currently 6 houses away from her destination. I had to drive past his house in order to get out of my neighborhood. By the way, he is a resident of his parents' home. I've just recently discovered that he merely wants to be friends. Since we ended our relationship, I've only talked to her on the phone once. She calls to tell me that she has been dragged behind the wheel at work by an unknown individual. I told her that it was likely that they believed it was appropriate since she had questionable morals. She had me on the defensive. Story 2. Stayed with my cheater. What life is like a year later. So, my biggest nightmare occurred over a year ago, and if anybody is interested, I can tell you about it. My husband had an emotional affair that lasted 3 months. I know this because I have real evidence, but even if I try to downplay her acts, I have to agree that this affair would have been far worse if I hadn't discovered/confronted her. I went insane when I found out. I can really sympathize with those who act irrationally after discovering they've been cheated on because betrayal is horrible, particularly when it's unwarranted. Many postings on this sub were extremely encouraging, however I noticed that most comments would advise posters to leave their spouse since once a cheater, always a cheater, and so on, which I understand. I decided to remain. And it was difficult at first, and it still is at times. What has made this year successful is that I have made a conscious decision not to focus on what has occurred since doing so will lead to failure and, more significantly, will drive me insane. In addition, I believe my spouse has been sincere in our reunion. We speak about infidelity every now and then, and it's usually not while we're angry. If I'm thinking about it, I'll tell her and we'll speak about it. But, lest you assume our relationship is like something out of a Seventh Heaven episode, I've been irritated and made remarks about her cheating in wacky ways. We've also found healing by having more date evenings, participating in housework/duties, sharing interests and hobbies, and, most importantly, having our own time and hobbies. A lack of communication about how unhappy we were and how we behaved out of responsibility to what we believed married people were supposed to do and be was a big part of what led to adultery. Now I do a lot of activities that bring me joy. I spend a lot more time with family and friends, and I do activities I like every day. I can say that I am content. Even if I were not married, I would be content. And that is my tale on how I was able to manage and survive. I've realized that I may always be in survival mode, but I remained because I wanted to forgive and see if we could rebuild and heal together, and so far, we have. This hasn't prevented me from being suspicious or assuming she'll never cheat again, but such ideas don't bother me so much that they damage my mental health. To anybody who wants to give it another go, I say do what you won't regret. People will sometimes abandon a project only to come to regret it later. Some may argue that this is a waste of time, but life does not guarantee that any future relationships will be better. I just believe that if you offer someone a second opportunity, you must do so on your terms. I informed my wife that I wanted to work things out, but I learned that my happiness is equally as essential as our happiness, so I've invested more in self-love and self-care. The majority of these postings are from individuals who have survived by fleeing, and I give them my support and hope for a better future. But I'd want to hear from those who have survived while remaining with their relationship. If anybody has any questions for me, I am happy to answer them. I honestly didn't want this to be such a big article, haha. Edit 1, I left out a huge portion of the tale, which was that we already had a daughter when this occurred. During the month-long vacation, our daughter visited both my house and hers. She was staying with family. My wife apologized to me, saying she was sorry for putting our kid and extended family through this. My wife doesn't need me for financial reasons, and vice versa. While she was gone, she had every option to break relations, but she didn't, and she made repeated attempts to communicate with me. Story 3. How to handle other cheaters in your life. My divorce from my WW, female 46, was finalized on Tuesday, after more than 2 years of heartache and misery. After 22 years, I'm still in a state of shock and disbelief that this is how the story came to a conclusion. But that's just how things work. It's been nothing short of amazing to see the transformation of the person you've known your whole life into this creature that science has yet to discover and name. I was speaking with a colleague and coworker earlier this week about my divorce and how tough it has been for me and my 2 children to pick up the pieces of our lives and move on. In spite of my illness, he has always been really supportive, and he has been someone I have turned to for assistance on a number of occasions to get me through tough moments. A little over an hour later, he called me into his office and shut the door behind me. He informed me, "This is going to be a tough conversation for me to have with you," and he burst into tears shortly after. What he said after that literally stole my breath away. After 40 years of marriage, my wife and I have decided to divorce. I had an extramarital affair with my wife at this very time. I was activated in a way I'd never experienced before. It seemed to me that he was looking for my input on the situation. Perhaps what he should do or how he should handle the problem are important considerations. Because of the nature of my job, I had to maintain my composure, but I was boiling with anger. Everything came back to me in its whole. I was really taken aback. This was someone in whom I had faith. I'm not sure I have enough faith in myself to see beyond these monsters at this point. He then proceeded to tell me how his 6 adult children had all turned their backs on him when his SDBXW exposed the 4-year-long affair only a few weeks before to our meeting. It's as if he wanted me to feel sorry for him, which I didn't. Seeing events develop in real time has been a fascinating experience. Because of this sub, I was able to almost foresee what he was going to say the following time. And, yes, you guessed correctly, he did. Almost word for word, this is what I was thinking. He repeated the cheater's playbook to me, secure in the knowledge that he was thinking and speaking for himself. The only thing I could do was sit there with my mouth gaping open and my eyes glazed over with rage. I informed him that I didn't have much to say since I was a devoted pro team member who had been betrayed. As I pushed myself out of my chair, I turned to face him and said, "I'll pray for your wife and children. There is a peculiar tension between the two of us at the moment. What strategies do you use to cope with other cheaters in your life?"